This is Dateline News and Conversation. Before I begin, I would like to bring your attention to the Friends of Crimea, Friends of Russia Telegram channel. You can find it at the Telegram address listed below. You will receive an aggregation of all the important news about Russia in international affairs, in the war in Ukraine, and with what is happening in the world of the BRICS Association. I encourage you to go, if you haven't already, and join this channel, Crimea Voice. My guest tonight is a dear friend. She is in Yerevan, Armenia. She's a member of an opposing political party. She has been keeping me informed about what is happening in Armenia. I am willing to bet that most people in the West and in the United States have no idea where Armenia is located and what the significance of what is happening there as we speak today. My guest, she's returning, Natalya Saghiyan. Natalya, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for inviting me again. It's really important.
Yes, it is really important. I have been to Armenia 2 times now. The last time that we were there, we met you in person, and we learned a great deal about what is happening in terms of a region, a disputed region of Artsakh, as you call it, Nagorno Karabakh. The situation is getting, I think, and it seems to me, worse and worse every day. Now, I want to read something that I found online to begin the show with you tonight. Quote, Armenia's prime minister has said his country's policy of solely relying on Russia to guarantee its security was a strategic mistake because Moscow was not able to deliver and is in the process of winding down its role in the region. I cannot believe that on face value. Natalya, let's begin the show with what is happening right now in Armenia and Artsakh, Nagorno Karabakh. The situation is getting more and more critical, if I may say. So tell me and tell our viewers what is happening and why is this so critical and I think dangerous.
To start with, Artsakh, as we Armenians call it, is better known as Nagorno Karabakh. It has been in blockade by Azerbaijan since 12 December 2022. This happened immediately after Prime Minister Pashinyan went to meet Aliyev in Prague and announced that he recognizes territorial integrity of Azerbaijan within 86,600 square kilometers, which include the territory of Artsakh and the so-called Lachin corridor. This is the only corridor that joins Armenia and Artsakh, from where Artsakh population was getting food, medical supplies, and any other things that they needed. Immediately after that announcement, Azerbaijan installed a checkpoint at the beginning of Lachin corridor And they justified it by saying that Pashinyan recognized our territorial integrity, including this Lachin corridor. So the checkpoint is absolutely legitimate. Doing so, Pashinyan de facto put under question the mission of Russian peacekeepers there. Because if he recognizes the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, including Lachin corridor, which is under the control of Russian peacekeepers, according to a trilateral announcement signed by President of Azerbaijan and Russia and Prime Minister of Armenia on the 9th of November of 2020 after the 44-day war. So when Azeris put a checkpoint there, presence of Russian peacekeepers over there is already under question. Because if they say when you enter Azerbaijani territory, you have to go through a checkpoint, then Azerbaijanis are legitimately raising a question of what do Russian peacekeepers have to do here? This is the territory of Azerbaijan. And I think only due to firm position of the Russian Federation, Azerbaijan doesn't take the risk of raising this issue on international platforms such as UN or European Union, etc. Because this is what we see, that the so-called collective West, represented sometimes by Brussels, sometimes by Washington, have one single goal here, to push Russia out of this region. This is why they are pretending to be good friends of Armenia, making statements saying that blockade of Artsakh is unbelievable, this is 21st century, how can this possibly happen? But unfortunately, all they do is only making statements. Since 15th of July, even this checkpoint has been closed, and Red Cross was not able to take any food or other supplies to Artsakh from Armenia. The only thing that Azerbaijan allows them to do is to move people who require immediate medical assistance from Artsakh to Armenia. Because this is what Azerbaijan wants. They want to either empty Artsakh, get rid of Armenians, so no people, no problem. And even Russian peacekeepers are not able to transport any food through that corridor. And when Armenians of Artsakh started to push this issue to international platforms, even called a special meeting of the UN Security Council, then Azerbaijan raised another solution, as they call it, but it's not a solution. They say, let's use the road from Aghdam, this is the Azerbaijani name of Armenian city of Akna, which is now occupied by Azerbaijanis, and it is on the territory of Nagorno Karabakh, but now it's under control of Azerbaijan. They say, what's the problem? Why are you suffering, people of Artsakh? Let's open this road and we will deliver food and supplies from Azerbaijan to Stepanakert, which is the capital of Artsakh. But Azeris probably have forgotten the people of Artsakh, you cannot break them. It's over 265 days that Artsakh has been in blockade. The people of Artsakh say, we will continue starving, but we will not take one match from Azerbaijan. Because when the international community says we support dialogue between Stepanakert and Baku, I want to believe that they do not understand what is this about. But in reality, I'm sure that people like Charles Michel, people like Anthony Blinken in Washington, they do understand perfectly that there can be no equal to equal negotiation between a part of Metropolia that wants to claim its independence and Metropolia. This is nonsense. Of course, Baku will never agree to sit around the table with Stepanakert and discuss it, on an equal basis. Because Baku already declared that the only agenda they are ready to negotiate with Stepanakert is the agenda of integration, or as they say, reintegration, as if Artsakh has been a part of Azerbaijan and then Armenian separatists decided to declare it independent, which is not true totally, because Artsakh declared its independence from Soviet Union before Soviet Azerbaijan did so by a referendum. After the color revolution, which was initiated by the West in 2018, Prime Minister Pashinyan came to power, and he stopped doing whatever the previous regime was doing to combat this propaganda of Azerbaijan. And now, when Azerbaijan's hands are released, they can do whatever they want. They can go to the European Union, to Council of Europe, to the UN, telling ugly lies about Armenians murdering Azerbaijanis, and there is nobody to stop them, because current regime in Armenia is totally pro-Turkish, I can say so, because we have to realize that Aliyev is not acting independently. Just like Prime Minister Pashinyan is a puppet of the West. And just one small remark, Turkey is a NATO member and the second largest army in NATO. So just like Pashinyan is a puppet of the West, Aliyev is the puppet of Turkey. Because Aliyev has lost his sovereignty long ago. Even during the 44-day war, all decision-making officers of Azerbaijani army were imported from Turkey and Israel partially, especially the part that was responsible for drones. Those were almost all Israeli officers. So Aliyev is not making any decisions. He is doing what he is told from Ankara. And Ankara is doing whatever it suits interests of Turkey in terms of gaining influence in South Caucasus. Because when we look at the collective West, whatever they cannot do directly through US Embassy or Embassy of France, or, well, Germany is not really so active here in Armenia, but the Great Britain is. They do it through Turkey, through pushing Aliyev against Armenia. Now, the situation is really very serious in Artsakh. If we can have the picture of bread coupons on the screen, I will say what is happening now. So the shortage of flour in Artsakh is so bad now that they already have special coupons for bread, one bread per person per day, and one bread weighs 200 grams. This is all people in Artsakh can afford. And people are fainting while standing in line to get his or her piece of bread. As I said in our previous show, unfortunately, we already had several cases of miscarriages of pregnant women because of insufficient food. Children are suffering avitaminosis because they have no access to fruits and vegetables. And there is another paradox here. Authorities in Artsakh, we will get there, that recently elected president of Artsakh resigned. I will get there in a minute. About 15 or 20 days ago, authorities of Artsakh declared officially that they have a very serious shortage of fuel, so they cannot provide fuel for people to deliver vegetables or fruits from villages of Artsakh to Stepanakert. But strangely enough, Soros Foundation bred and fed activists in Artsakh, they have already infiltrated even in Artsakh, even to Artsakh, had enough fuel to fill their cars and come by their cars to the airport of Stepanakert, where Russian peacekeepers are located, to block the road in front of Russian peacekeepers to express their complaints to Russian peacekeepers, because they think that Russians do not defend Artsakh, thoroughly enough, which is not the mandate of Russian peacekeepers. So we can see that hands of Soros are already even in Artsakh. Now about resignation of Arayik Harutyunyan, the elected president of Artsakh. He was elected in 2020, some 4 months before the war started in Artsakh on 27th of September of 2020. When he was elected, he declared that the sky of Artsakh is completely closed by special stations, so no drones or no other missiles can hurt Artsakh whatsoever. and we saw exactly the opposite on the first day of war. Arayik Harutyunyan lost his trust among people of Artsakh right immediately after the 44-day war, but he was dragging on and on and on until very recently, when he actually declared about his resignation on the 1st of September. But the good thing is that Arayik Harutyunyan was prepared to do so several months ago, because he initiated constitutional changes in Artsakh. And in the situation when there's a war, a state of war declared in Artsakh, if a president resigns, the parliament elects a new president, because we all know that Aliyev imposes several demands, including dismantlement of all state institutions in Artsakh and dismantlement of the defense army of Artsakh. Only under these conditions he will agree to negotiate with Stepanakert. So by this we can see that Aliyev is not ready to negotiate. He is only ready to integrate or reintegrate, as they say, Artsakh. Now Arayik Harutyunyan resigned. Elections of the president by the parliament are announced for 8th of September. And we already know approximately who will be the next president. Is a person who is now appointed as the state secretary of Artsakh. He has a very significant military background, and Azeris already had made a lot of noise about it. And we're hoping that this person, when he is elected as a president by the parliament of Artsakh, will do everything to improve the situation. Now let's return to the closed corridor. Why can we see how the West is trying to manipulate this? Because on the 30th of August, Mayor of Paris, Madame Anne Hidalgo, arrived to Kornizor. This is the Armenian name of the flatlands, which are right next to the Azeri checkpoint, with several trucks filled with humanitarian aid for Artsakh. Of course, France made huge announcements several days before that, that Mayor of Paris is bringing aid to people of Artsakh. They all knew that Aliyev is not going to allow these trucks to enter Artsakh. It was obvious. He announced it several days before. But Madam Mayor of Paris still did what she promised, and she came to the checkpoint with no success. Trucks are still there, but Madam flew back to Paris, of course. Her agenda is very busy. I'm sure she cannot spend days there. Before that, 1 month ago, when this issue was raised again in the UN Security Council, Prime Minister of Armenia suddenly decided to express his goodwill and sent 400 tons of humanitarian aid to the same checkpoint, knowing that Azeris will not let it pass. So what kind of show are you delivering, Mr. Pashinyan? This is so, I don't know, unfair towards people of Artsakh to play these games when people are starving. Children are starving, and you are delivering this cheap show just to show that Armenia cares. Armenia cares, but Armenian regime doesn't care. And these trucks are still there. I don't know about the condition of the food that's in there. I don't know if these trucks are refrigerated trucks, but this was just a show to express, I don't know, the position of official Yerevan, which contradicts, in fact, with position of official Yerevan, which they announce wherever they go outside Armenia. Whenever official Yerevan goes, I don't know, on the level of the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the Minister of Defense or any other officials, they say that Armenia doesn't want, this is so unfair. And first of all, this is illegal because the Constitution of Armenia clearly states that the Republic of Armenia is a guarantor of security of the Republic of Artsakh. So whatever Pashinyan is claiming now is illegal. And what he has done recently, these statements that you have mentioned, when he was giving an interview to Italian La Repubblica, what he said is, of course, scandalous. Because first of all, it is Nikol Pashinyan who brought Armenia to the condition when our security had to be dependent on another country. Before he took power, Armenia was a producer of security in the region. So we were delivering security also not only to Armenia, but also to the region. And today, he has made Armenia from producer of security into consumer of security. Now we need other countries to help us to provide our security. And this is 100% the result of activity of Mr. Pashinyan. So what he says is not true. It's unfair towards our strategic ally, which Russia is. The problem is that rhetorics of Mr. Pashinyan that he developed starting from the first moment he came to power generated too much expectation in Armenian population regarding Russian Federation. So he generated excess expectations, and then he did everything for these expectations not to be fulfilled. This is why people of Armenia now question significantly position of Russian Federation, especially when very few people, such as me and several other friends of mine and colleagues, are working on explaining the real situation. First of all, it is not the mandate of Russian peacekeepers to defend the territory of Artsakh. Peacekeepers are there to prevent, or if possible, if it's not possible to prevent, to monitor and register violations of the ceasefire regime. They are not there to defend the land of Artsakh, because Nikol Pashinyan and his regime are constantly accusing Russian Federation, represented by Russian peacekeepers, for not defending the land of Artsakh, because after the end of the 44-day war, Azerbaijanis every now and then regularly attack Artsakh and take bits of land, one a little bit here, one hill there, a piece of forest there. Of course, they do it to move forward and to occupy better positions, but also they do it to psychologically oppress people of Artsakh, to make them believe that they are helpless and there is nobody to help them. Because the expectation is already generated. People expect more than Russian peacekeepers can legitimately do. And this is the fault of Nikol Pashinyan and Arai Karutunyan, the already resigned president of Artsakh, because these two worked in pair, they worked together. So the problem today that we're having today is that there is a group of people in Artsakh who are acting. These people are mostly represented by different agencies of the USAID and different projects of the Soros Fund, of the Open Society Institute. Unfortunately, they have infiltrated to Artsakh, and they are trying to generate negative attitude towards Russian peacekeepers, which is just one piece of this puzzle, which Collective West, so-called, is trying to put together in order to push Russia out of the region. Now, why did suddenly Mayor of Paris arrive to Artsakh? Because when we spoke in our previous shows, if you remember, I said that when we say Collective West, we have to remember that it is not uniform structure. There are different players within Collective West, and each of these players at times play their own game. So when Turkey is trying to improve its position in the Caucasus, It is operating as a representative of the West plus its own national interest. Now, this is my opinion, that France suddenly decided to improve its position in the South Caucasus because of, among other reasons, because of the situation in Africa, where France is losing its influence rapidly. And I think, well, we can say that France actually failed spectacularly, because it's not only Niger now, it's several other countries now that are demanding French diplomats to leave the country. And these are the countries that has been under French influence for decades. So France suddenly decided to act on its own and find itself a little place to put its boot in the South Caucasus. Where I'm going to the following statement. Every player in this game, including, with all due respect, including Russia, which is normal because every head of the state has to do everything to push forward the national interests of the state he is heading. This is normal. So every player in this game, the USA, the European Union, Turkey, and Russia, are playing their own interest here, at the cost of interest of Armenia and Artsakh, and sometimes of Azerbaijan from the Turkish side. Because Turkey, well, I think we will see it happening. It's not the far future. If everything evolves as Erdogan is planning, very soon Turkey will take control over Azerbaijan completely. But this situation, let's return to Armenia. Armenia appeared in this situation because of Nikol Pashinyan, who was thinking that he can sit on two chairs, playing his own game with Russia and playing his own game with the West. His mistake was to think so, because he is not skilled enough to do that. Let's be fair. Ilham Aliyev is a much more experienced leader than Nikol Pashinyan, and he has the support, temporary, but he has the support of Turkey. But even Ilham Aliyev cannot continue playing this game, sitting on two chairs, not to talk about Nikol Pashinyan. So as we see from his interview to the Italian La Repubblica, I'm thinking that finally Nikol Pashinyan put himself into dire straits, into a situation when he has to choose on which chair he will continue sitting. And I think that he probably received certain guarantees from the West, and this is why he is now opposing Russia so straightforward and frank and blankly. We will see, I think, very soon, because today I've read a very funny tweet from a person who is, I think he is the responsible person of the EU for NATO expansion, somebody called Günther Fehlinger, I think. He's a very funny personage. He's every now and then making funny statements. But about, for example, recently he said that the West, NATO, has to do everything to dismantle countries that are members of BRICS into smaller countries, because they are now grouping up in BRICS in order to combat the democratic and enlightened West. With all due respect to the United States as a great country, set aside the figure of Joe Biden. Joe Biden cannot defend himself. How can he possibly defend Armenia? Now I would like, if it's possible, to see the pictures of people of Artsakh who came to the road from Aghdam to Stepanakert, and see how they are gathering there at the night time when they received the information that Baku sent humanitarian aid to that road, as they call it, humanitarian aid, because they want to infiltrate to Artsakh. The people of Artsakh are not allowing them to enter, because they know that even if there is, I don't know, 1 kilo of flour comes from Azerbaijan to Artsakh, this will be the start of integration. This is what people of Artsakh absolutely reject.
So, Natalya, let me ask you a very important question.
Yes.
This region of Artsakh, Nagorno Karabakh, the people there voted to be independent. Am I correct when I say that they do not want to be part of Azerbaijan? They want to be independent, and they are refusing any help whatsoever from Azerbaijan. But on the other hand, Azerbaijan is blocking this passageway, this only road from Armenia to Nagorno Karabakh, through which food and medicine and water can be transported. So the people there basically are under a siege. Is that correct?
Luckily, people in Artsakh, since they have had this history already, living as a part of Azerbaijan in Soviet Union, and they know what can potentially happen. So this system exists in Artsakh. They have prepared to this. So of course they have collected some supplies and flour and grain and everything. But they are in blockade since 12th of December last year. So obviously they ran out of supplies. Azerbaijan has cut off their gas, natural gas, cut off their electricity. And now Artsakh is using its own electricity, which is obviously not enough, from hydropower stations, which are only 3 or 4 left after the 44-day war, because the rest of them is situated in territories now occupied by Azerbaijan. So people in Artsakh have only 2 hours of electricity per day, have no natural gas supply, and sometimes they are having problems with water. And now they significantly ran out of supplies because, as I said already, they have no fuel to deliver vegetables and fruits from villages. Whoever has horses or donkeys, people are trying to transport some fruits, vegetables, whatever they grow in their gardens to Stepanakert, because people in villages live a little easier because they can eat what they grow. But this will end very soon because the autumn is here already. And you are right, yes, people in Artsakh are literally in the siege, but they still refuse to take any help from Azerbaijan because they know that the day they open the road from Akna, Ardam, as Azeris say, to Stepanakert, this will be start of the end for Artsakh. They refuse to be a part of Azerbaijan, as they did already 32 days ago, years ago. In fact, on 2nd of September, there was the day of the independence declaration of Artsakh. 32 years ago, on 2nd of September of 1991, Artsakh declared its independence from the Soviet Union, which was followed by a referendum in December same year, because Soviet laws at that time demanded a referendum in order to declare independence. In fact, Azerbaijan didn't have any referendum. They simply declared their independence by the resolution of the Supreme Council of the Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan, which happened after the referendum in Artsakh. So people of Artsakh have all legitimate grounds to declare their independence. But of course, for dictatorship, which is now in Azerbaijan, it has been very important to take control of Artsakh again, because father of current president of Azerbaijan, Haydar Aliyev, actually lost the war, the first Artsakh war. He was the president at that time, from 92 to 94. He lost the war, and his son always had this, obsession to be better than his father. So when he took the fortress of Shushi under control, he came there and said, "See, father, the father is dead long ago. Aliyev is a strange guy, yes? He said, if my father can see me from the sky above, he can see that I made his dream come true. So they are using all this psychological pressure on the people of Artsakh all the time. Even sometimes people in Artsakh have problems with internet because there is a blocking internet. Very often they are using leaflets, like, a helicopter flying over Artsakh and distributing leaflets with the following content, that you can get enough food and jobs and money and whatever you want. All you need to do is to just say yes to integration to Azerbaijan. Can you imagine what does a family with, for example, 2 children starving for over than 265 days, what do they feel when they get a leaflet like this? This is a typical psychological pressure. And as we have read in the paper prepared by Mr. Ocampo, he is the first prosecutor of, I think, the Court of Human Rights, and he is a specialist on genocide. The president of Artsakh now resigned, asked him, Mr. Ocampo, to write a statement on situation in Artsakh. And after 1 month of research, Mr. Ocampo came up with a statement that what is happening in Artsakh now is a genocidal practice implemented by official Baku, because it's not only murdering people with a weapon, it's also creating a situation when people cannot get food, medical assistance, fuel, water, electricity, whatever. If you deprive them of these basic things, this is also genocide. So we already even have an international opinion on that. But when this issue was taken to the Security Council of the UN, it was represented by current regime in Yerevan, which made downgraded it to a humanitarian problem, whereas this is a political issue. People of Artsakh do not want to have any road connecting them to Azerbaijan. They want to have the Lachin road, which was the only corridor connecting them to Armenia for 32 years. And the free operation of this corridor is clearly written down in the paper of the 9th of November, signed by 3 sides, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia. So Azerbaijan is violating this document, and the Western-fueled mass media here in Armenia and in Artsakh are using this to oppose Russia, saying that how is it that there is a signature of President Putin under this document, and Russia cannot force Azerbaijan to follow this document. And this is another problem, which is always being kept under control by the Western financed media in Armenia. Whenever there is whatever incident on the border or in Artsakh, the first target are Russian peacekeepers, which is so unfair because, first of all, I speak as a woman, and I imagine that if I was a woman living somewhere in Russia and my son was serving as a peacekeeper in the middle of nowhere in the country which I cannot find on a map, but I see on the news all the time that the people whom my son is defending are so unhappy with the job my son is doing there. I can imagine how this influences also the Russian society, because their sons are here in Artsakh now protecting Armenians of Artsakh from ethnic cleansing. So all this Western influence, as we call it, the soft power through mass media, and they're now very active on Telegram, they're everywhere. And they are pushing forward this anti-Russian agenda, which influences also attitude of Russians in Russia towards Armenia and Artsakh. because Russians over there are thinking that we are ungrateful. And this is how this unhealthy environment, atmosphere is being created between the two peoples of Armenia and Russians. Not necessarily Russians, the citizens of Russia. They may not be Russians by nationality. These young men who are serving here now as peacekeepers. This is another aspect of this story, because it's a difficult situation, I can understand. And some centers of power are using this difficult situation to reach one single goal, to push Russia out of the region, but they do not offer us anything in exchange. Because official Yerevan has never received any official offer from the collective West or from players within collective West individually to replace Russian peacekeepers. All they did was they sent here an EU observer group, which is not really EU because Canadians are also represented there. And Canada is not a member of EU, as we all know. And all this observing mission is doing is monitoring, strangely, border between Armenia and Iran, whereas the threat is not from Iran, the threat is from Azerbaijan. So obviously this EU mission is monitoring situation and reporting to Brussels and to Azerbaijan, in fact, they have admitted it, that whenever they have a ready weekly plan wherever they want to go, they send this plan to Baku. So Baku knows exactly where to hit Armenian border for EU observers not to be present there, not to be able to register anything. These EU observers are here only to monitor situation at the border with Iran. Because there are two major goals. In fact, the first major goal is to push Russia out of the region in order to be able to put pressure on Iran. So when Armenia is completely torn away from Russia, Iran loses its one of its roads that leads to Russia. Because if you look at the map of the Commonwealth of Independent States, the border between this Commonwealth of Independent States and Iran goes through the border of Armenia and Iran. So this is also one of the goals that the West wants to achieve, to cut Russia off Iran in Armenia. And officials from Tehran already made a very, very straight statement that they will not tolerate any geopolitical changes in the region and changes in terms of borders in the region. So Tehran is aware of this threat that is coming from the EU observers here in Armenia, whereas Azerbaijan doesn't let any EU observer on its territory. So they are all using Armenia as a proxy polygon to clear their, arguments between different players, which is very dangerous because the end of this road is Ukraine. We see what happens in Ukraine now, and this is because in 2014, the same collective West made another color revolution in Ukraine and brought Zelensky to power. And they have turned Ukraine into a proxy polygon. And we see what's happening there now. This really hurts me, the situation in Ukraine, because I see that two Slavonic nations are fighting against each other because of the collective West. And this is really painful. And when I see what's happening in Ukraine now, when they basically ran out of Ukrainians, and there is now a new wave of mobilization, they are now trying to collect people from other countries where the people fled to European countries when the special military operation started. And I read it every day in the news that Polish authorities are sending them back, Austrians, even in some places in Germany, people are very unhappy with Ukrainian refugees. And all this is a tragedy. This is a tragedy. And this is exactly potentially what can happen in Armenia if we continue this way, if Nikol Pashinyan does what he's doing.
So, Natalya, I think it is very obvious what the United States is doing. I don't even talk about the collective West anymore because they're all vassals. They're all servants. They're all slaves of the United States of America. Let's face it. And what the United States is trying to do, as you so eloquently pointed out, is to create chaos and conflict in the region to weaken Russia, to spread Russia out thinly. And it's not just in your region. In Armenia, it's happening in Georgia. It's happening in Serbia now. It's happening wherever the United States can create conflict and to isolate Russia. I think we agree on that. I want to ask you one last question, because I know that there have been wars between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Many have died. Many have been wounded and crippled. I read today that there's still some fighting that's going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and 4 Armenians were killed, and several Azeri soldiers were injured and I don't know if killed. How likely is it? How likely is it? It's my last question for you, that a full-scale war could break out again?
Particularly considering this last statement of Pashinyan regarding Russia, now it's even more possible and it's even more likely, because we have been receiving information about Azerbaijan concentrating his army at the borders with Armenia, in the northeast of Armenia, where the Sunnik region is, through which Azerbaijan wants to push a Zangezur corridor. And we know that there is a significant movement of Azerbaijan army in that region. And now when Nikol Pashinyan says that all that he says about Russia, Azeris may consider it possible to attack now, because Russia, after all these statements, will just not want to interfere. And probably also because of the situation in Ukraine. I mean, it's not easy. Even though Russia is a great and a strong state, still it's not easy to run a special military operation in Ukraine and to have a second front. You see, we have to understand that if Azerbaijan attacks Armenia, this will not only be a military campaign against Armenia, this will be a second front for Russia. Because even though Nikol Pashinyan is saying all these things that he said recently in his interview, the signed several documents, several treaties between Armenia and Russia are still there. They're not going anywhere. These treaties are effective and Russia will have to do something about it. So this will be, Azerbaijan will shoot 2 rabbits, attack Armenia, and grab people, and whatever they can occupy, they will occupy. And open a second front for Russia, pleasing its Western masters like this. I haven't read yet what happened with today. Erdogan and Putin had a meeting today in Sochi. This is also very important. I'm going to have to read the official information that's coming from that meeting. So it will be a big problem if Erdogan manages to get what he wants from Russia. Because we have to understand, Russia is an empire, and it is acting as an empire. And of course, situation in South Caucasus is very important for Russia. But situation with Turkey, as I see it, is more important. This is why Putin sometimes is closing his eyes to very, very bad things that Erdogan is doing towards Russia. And they continue construction of the nuclear power plant and many other large projects in Turkey. And Azerbaijan, if Azerbaijan attacks Armenia, which I think is very likely unless something changes during these few days, it will not be only the decision of Azerbaijan, it will be pushed by Turkey, and Turkey in turn is pushed by its Western fathers from NATO. So as you see, Armenia, just like Ukraine at time, is being a victim of this huge geopolitical game. But we are in this situation because of current regime in Yerevan. Because none of this happened before. All of this started to happen after the color revolution. So, like I said, very likely that the large-scale military actions will happen within the coming, say, 2 weeks, unless something very serious happens on the international arena that would stop Azerbaijan from doing so, because they will not find it feasible, or we will have to see what happens.
Natalya, I want to thank you very much for this update. It is really very serious, and I don't think it's possible to emphasize enough how serious it is. And I'm not sure that the United States or anybody is able to stop another all-out conflict in that region. I just am not sure that any of them have the ability to do that right now. The conflict in Ukraine, the situation in the rest of the world is extremely tense right now. It's a very dangerous, dark time for all of humanity, because the United States, which has been behind all of this, using soft power and hard power military force, has created this destabilized situation all over this part of the world. I personally am not optimistic that President Putin and that Russia is able to avoid what I think is on the horizon. Natalya, thank you so much. We'll look forward to the next report from you from Armenia.